So, good afternoon, everybody. Let us begin. Let us
Good
let us begin today's Saturday seminar. And today we have guest Professor Gopal Sahu, Head of Department of Philosophy, University of Allahabad, to deliver his talk. And first, I would like to invite two persons, two scholars of our department. One is Siddharth Srivastava, and other is Chandan Hemwani to take the dais and start the proceedings and do as per the planning of the lecture. So, Siddharth Srivastava and Chandan Hemwani, please unmute your video and audio and both introduce yourself. First, Chandan, introduce yourself, and then Siddharth will start the proceeding. Chandan.
afternoon, sir. I'm Chandan Hemwani. I'm an MA student of second year, University of Lucknow. I'm studying philosophy for the past 5 years, and I'm really excited to hear this lecture from Gopal, Professor Sahu. And I look forward to this evening and on the eve of Teachers' Day to hear this lecture and learn from distinguished guest professor that we have. I hand over the mic to Siddharth to say a few words and then begin and proceed further.
Thank you, Chandan, and thank you, Honorable Sir. Um, my name is Siddharth Srivastava, and I'm a research scholar in the Department of Philosophy, and I'm pursuing my research under Dr. Prashant Shukla. And my title is confined to the Greek philosophy, and I'm working on the ontology of becoming in those times. What we have for today is a very special lecture to be delivered by Professor Gopal Sahu from Department of Philosophy. He's a head working over there and from the University of Allahabad. So I would like to begin by informally welcoming everyone today uh, who are present here. Very good afternoon to everyone, and it's my pleasure to extend a cheerful welcome to all. We have a very invigorating lecture ahead of us today on Teachers' Day that further enhances the specialness of Saturday seminars. I would take the I would take on the behalf I would take this opportunity on the behalf of our department to show the unending depth of our gratitude to our teachers as they shine with a light so bright that their guidance basically shapes our lives. The word falls short as they cannot encapsulate our love and appreciation for the teachers. So let us honor them today with 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 the deepest appreciation that we can find in our heart. And thank you for always guiding us. Um, um, I am genuinely honored to introduce our speaker for today's Saturday seminar, um, Professor Gopal Sahu, a PhD in philosophy from prestigious Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, presently works as a professor and head, Department of Philosophy, University of Allahabad, Prayagraj. Before that, Professor Sahu has taught in the prestigious Pratap Center of Philosophy, Amalner, and in the PG Government College, Chandigarh. Having stood first in philosophy honors in BA, he went to Utkal University to get his MA degree in philosophy. Dr. Sahu joined a PhD program at IIT Bombay under Dr. P.R. Bhatt and was awarded PhD degree for the thesis titled Rules Following Skepticism, Kripke, Goodman, Quine, and Wittgenstein. His areas of specializations are contemporary epistemology, particularly naturalized epistemology, skepticism, philosophy of mind, and philosophy of science. His current research areas are in consciousness and applied ethics. Dr. Sahu has 23 years of teaching experience both at PG and UG level. Over the years, he has been teaching papers on classical Western philosophy, analytical philosophy, ethics, symbolic logic, and philosophy of mind. However, his core teaching papers are theory of knowledge and logic. He is a member of Board of Studies in North Maharashtra University, Jalgaon, Punjab University, Chandigarh, and Punjabi University, Patiala. Dr. Sahu has published one book and 50 papers in almost all philosophy journals in India. His publications are mainly on naturalized epistemology, skepticism, philosophy of science, and ethics. He has presented papers in several seminars and conferences, both national and international. Dr. Sahu has got the opportunity to edit the prestigious philosophy journal, The Philosophical Quarterly, published from North Maharashtra University, Jalgaon, from 1997 to 2002. Dr. Sahu is a member of Sandarshan, the philosophy journal published from his own department. Dr. Sahu was awarded the prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru Doctoral Scholarship for History and Philosophy of Science, instituted by Jawaharlal Memorial Fund, New Delhi, besides UGC's JRF. Now, I would like to call Ms. Neha Singh for the reading of the abstract. Thank you.
Thank you, Siddharth. A very good afternoon, everyone, and a very happy Teachers' Day to all the teachers present here. The topic of today's seminar is The Gateous Paradox, Solution and Dissolutions by Professor Gopal Sahu. Abstract. Gateous paradox is a counterexample presented through a thought experiment to show that it is possible for a knower S to be justified in believing a proposition P that is in fact false, and to conclude that the condition accepted in the propositional definition of knowledge do not constitute a sufficient condition, resulting in a paradoxical situation, that is, S knows P yet does not know P. It is now generally accepted that Gateous paradox is inescapable in any theorization of knowledge. The talk first present five main solutions, that is, first, eliminating fallibility; second, eliminating luck; third, eliminating false evidences; fourth, eliminating defeat; and fifth, eliminating weak causality. To prove that these solutions are nothing but to call for strengthening the justification of knowledge, and thus cannot be called as solutions to Gateous problem in the real sense. The talk will argue that the Gateous counterexample are obtained due to vagueness of epistemic word such as justification, and by extrapolating of the problem of logic into epistemology. Further, it is argued that Gateous counterexample exploits certain odd and unique cases which cannot be generalized. Moreover, Gautier has misread the propositional definition of knowledge given by Plato and concluded that the three conditions of knowledge are not sufficient. The talk will conclude that Gateous paradox is a problem of skepticism at the worst and a call for consolidation for justification condition at the best. Thus, the talk dissolves the received view of Gateous counterexample to prove that the knowledge is indeed a proposition believed, true, and justified, and Gateous problem is not real, thus dissolved. Again, over to you, Siddharth.
Thank you, Neha. Now I would like to call in our Honorable Head of Department, Professor K.C. Pandey, for the deliberation of his formal welcome.
So, happy Teachers' Day to all. This is a very auspicious occasion that Professor Gopal Sahu has accepted our invitation to deliver his talk in Saturday seminars, which has been going on for quite some time. So, first of all, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our guest today, Professor Gopal Sahu, Head of Department of Philosophy, University of Allahabad. And I'm sure that scholars, students, and we all will get benefited with his lecture. And after his lecture is over, we'll have a small discussion. as so far as possible, because this is online program, so maybe that discussions that's not possible so much, but we'll try to make it like at least some questions are taken up. So first of all, I welcome Professor Gopal Sahu, uh, warm welcome, and then all students, all scholars, and teachers, all philosophy lovers throughout the India, all are welcome to this program, and let us enjoy uh, the lecture by Professor Gopal Sahu. So directly I invite Professor Gopal Sahu. I'm very glad to invite Professor Gopal Sahu to deliver his talk. So please, Professor Gopal Sahu, please take the dais now.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor K.C. Pandey, for this invitation to present my paper in the Saturday seminars. I also thanks Mr. Siddharth, who has given a very nice introduction about me. And also I thanks Neha for reading out my abstract of the presentation. Now, before I start my presentation, I must congratulate Professor K.C. Pandey and the faculty member of his department and all the research scholars for hosting such a nice lecture program, online program during this COVID time. And moreover, they have invited, I have listened 2 or 3 lectures in the past 2-3 weeks, and I have enjoyed it like anything. And they have chosen topics and the speaker in such a way that it is creating a kind of narrative, and they have chosen the core philosophical topic, not like Atmanirbhar or yoga and this kind of thing. So in that way, it is a very, very nice attempt by the student. And Professor K.C. Pandey was telling me that it is an initiative started by, it is started by the student for them and by them only. So that is a very good initiative by the research scholar, and they must be given the credit for this. Now, I am also happy to join with this program for 2 reasons. One is that I am getting an opportunity to be associated with such a very serious academic endeavor. The other reason is that last Saturday only, I heard Professor P.R. Bhatt's lecture. And as you know, P.R. Bhatt is my PhD supervisor. So when I get an opportunity to speak immediately after him, and that too during the on the day of Teachers' Day, I think this is a very nice coincidence for me. And I thank everyone for giving this opportunity, creating such a nice coincidence for me. Now, the title of my research paper is Getier's Paradox, Solution and Resolution. While doing my research for this presentation, I came across some very beautiful fact, anecdotes, and information regarding the papers, regarding the author of this paper. I mean, author of the regarding Getier's, on whose paper I am presenting my, this presentation. That is knowledge to justified belief. So, as we know, Getier's is now 93 years old, and he's still active. He's an emeritus professor in University of Massachusetts. When he was 36 years old in 1963, he was looking for a tenure job, and his job was not permanent, and he needed one quick paper, so that his job will be made permanent. And his colleagues, his senior colleagues in his university, that is Alvin Plantinga, suggested him to publish a small paper in Analysis, because Analysis is a journal which publishes very quickly. So he prepared this paper, and ultimately he published the paper, and his job was also made. He was also made permanent on the basis of his paper. And the title of the paper is Knowledge to Justified Belief, and that was published in the year 1963 in the journal of Analysis. Now he got his job, and in the process, he gave job to thousands of analytic philosophers. But strangely, he has never published a single paper on epistemology, and that too on propositional definition of epistemology, since he has published this classical paper. And moreover, there are by this time there are truckloads of publication on Getier's problem. So this is the some of the background of this paper, and he was directly associated with philosophers like Roderick Chisholm, Norman Malcolm, Alvin Plantinga. Then he has also worked with another great philosopher, Keith Lehrer. So his specialization is not epistemology. He is still working on modal logics, modal necessity and possibility and that kind of thing. So strangely, he got the job for this paper. He has published a paper that has produced thousands and lakhs of paper, one can say, loads of paper, but he has never ever published a single paper after his 1963 paper. Now, my question is, there are a lot of publications, no doubt. So what I'm going to do with this publication, where I should add another paper to that truckload of presentation, truckload of publication on Getier's problem. I will, my objective here is two things, and I think that so far this two aspect has not been properly dealt with. The first thing to prove in this short paper is that I will try to show that Getier's problem or Getier's questioning of classical or propositional definition of knowledge is exactly a kind of paradox. He's posing a kind of paradox that we can call as Gettier paradox, or you can simply call the knowledge paradox also. And he said that if we analyze the classical definition of knowledge or the traditional definition of knowledge or the propositional definition of knowledge, it will result in a kind of paradox. And we know that a paradox is a kind of contradiction. And this is what I want to prove. And according to me, the Getier's problem has not been interpreted in this way. So this will be my way of interpreting, and I think this is some kind of unique interpretation. And secondly, I'll argue that this paradox questions not only the possibility or the generalization of knowledge in the propositional knowledge as a definition that fulfill the three conditions, but also it poses a challenge to provide a definition as well as a counter definition of knowledge. And secondly, my objective is to prove that, or to show that, or to argue that this paradox is a false paradox, and this need to be resolved rather than solved. So these are the two main objectives of my presentation. Now, coming to the Getier's problem, this, as I said, Gettier has published this paper called Is Knowledge True Justified Belief in 1963. Now, this is a very short paper, 2.5 pages paper, and I hope that all of you might have read this paper. When I read this paper in long back, I mean, when I was doing my PhD, I was very disgusted. Like, I mean, what kind of thing philosophers are doing? It was so, it was never disgusting in the sense it will never inspire you to study philosophy. It will rather confuse you, and it is based on certain narratives or certain stories that you'll see that it's so very childish, very preposterous kind of thing. So this is what my feeling is that. And another feeling I said that this is a paper as if meant for Indian research scholars who have just passed out from those who have just got their PhD degree and looking for a job. And it describes the situation, what happens in the interview boards and the interview scenario, the aspiration of the PhD scholar like that. So that way, I thought that this is a very silly kind of paper. If you understand, if you read this paper, you will say that Gettier has asked us to imagine such certain situation, like two people or two people are appearing for an interview. Then manager is assuring one person that he will get the job. Ultimately, the other person get the job, and he says that still that the knowledge is there. And after that, in the different example, he talks about owning a Ford motor car, and ultimately that person is not owned by that car. So that kind of situation creates a lot of misconception. So that is where what I'm trying to do is that I will try to simplify his example. He has given three characters particularly, Jones, Smith, and Brown. But I will Indianize this, example, and I will try to uh, express or put the paradoxical paradox given by Gettier in this thing. Now, you will know that knowledge is a is a situation, is a process in which it is an achievement. Rather, we need to be engaged with certain cognitive activity to gain knowledge. Now, let us imagine three people. Let's say Syam, Hari, and Ram. Syam, Ram, and Hari. And here they are engaged in a process which result in a kind of knowledge, or they are in the process of knowing something. And in this particular situation, Syam is the knower. So if you take the proportional, I'm not defining proportional definition of knowledge here, but assuming that everyone knows the three conditions, that is, there is a knower, there is a proposition S, P, and S has to fulfill three conditions, that is the belief condition, B condition, and T condition, and the J condition. That is where the traditional definition of knowledge is called JBT condition. So now these three people, Syam, Hari, and Ram, they are engaged in a situation where they are trying to produce something. In this situation, Syam is the knower. Syam is S. Now imagine Syam has two propositions. That is P. The P stands for Syam knows that P stands for Hari will get the job. Second proposition is Q, and the Q stands for Ram has got 10 rupees in his pocket. So S, that is Syam, has or knows two propositions, that is P and Q. Now, knows P and Q, that means both P and Q are justified, believed, and true. For example, take the P proposition first. Now, P, that stands for that Hari will get the job. Now, this particular proposition is believed by S, that is Syam, because he believes it. Now, come to the truth. Truth part is that, and the justification part is that somebody who is giving the job to Hari has promised that he will get, and that person is reliable, is the manager of that particular organization where Hari is likely to get the job. So that is justified. So according to S, that is Syam, P is a case of knowledge. Now coming to the Q proposition, that Ram has got 10 rupees in his pocket. That is also equally believed, true, and justified, because he has all the justificative support for that. Now, on the basis of this two proposition, if Syam will apply the rudimentary logic, propositional logic, and combine them together and make a combined proposition, compound proposition, that is P and Q, that will be P and Q, then P and Q will be true, because both the component, the part of the component, compound proposition, is the compound proposition, that is conjoint proposition, that is P and Q are true separately. So their combination will also be equally true. Now, Gettier has said that if you take this compound proposition, that is P dot Q, which is a true proposition, on the basis of the law of entailment, one can derive a next proposition from this combined proposition. Let us call this combined proposition P, Q, and that is R. So the combined proposition is R. From R, Shyam S can derive a proposition on the basis of the entailment, and that will be whoever will get the job will have 10 rupees in his pocket. Now, this proposition is true not by combination or that kind of logical operation. Rather, in a process, are you hearing me? Can I hear?
Yeah.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
So, on the basis of the entailment, he can derive the proposition PQRS, that is ST, that is that T will be whoever will get the job will have 10 rupees in his pocket. Now, this particular proposition, that is T, is true, believed and justified on the basis of the entailment. Now, what is entailment? We know all these things. The entailment, the principle of entailment is that if S knows P and P implies Q and P knows that P implies Q, and if P is also true, then by entailment, P knows that Q is also true and he knows that Q is true. So, on the basis of the principle of entailment, he knows that whoever will get the job will have 10 rupees in his pocket. Now, this particular proposition which is true, just this is a case of knowledge now, by entailment. Now, imagine that S, that is the Shyam, got the job and Shyam has also got 10 rupees in his pocket. Now, if you take this particular lucky scenario, then we'll see that this particular proposition that whoever will get the job will have 10 rupees in his pocket will still be true from where it is derived, which is turned out to be false now. And this is quite logically possible. Now, on the basis of this situation, a paradox can be created. What will happen? In the given situation, in the new situation, what will happen? That your entailment, that whoever will get the job will have 10 rupees, is true, believed and justified, but it is true, believed and justified not on the basis of certain true proposition, but on the basis of certain proposition which happens to be true, lucky to be true, but which is false, but is proved to be true on the basis of certain logical processes. So on the new scenario, we will not admit that whoever will get the job will have 10 rupees in his pocket. Now, imagine this thing. In the first case, when we derive this proposition, PQR and T proposition, and in the second scenario, the T proposition, they are the same thing. They have the same truth value. They will be considered as knowledge, given the three conditions. Given that both the cases, the same proposition fulfill the three conditions. But in one case, we will consider it as knowledge. In the other case, it will not be considered as knowledge, even though both fulfill the same three propositional conditions of knowledge. And this is what is the paradox. People will usually call it a problem, and I call it a paradox because it is a situation where S knows PQRST, that is the entailment proposition. No, S knows T, yet S does not know T. This is the paradox I am telling, and this paradox is a contradiction. That means it is as similar as T dot not P. For S dot T proposition and dot not T are equally possible. Now, this situation has been recreated in a different kind of entailment where he talks about a proposition P and then he has applied the principle of disjunction by adding, that is P phase Q, and that, so we need not go to that example again. in that example also, through the problem through entailment through disjunction, he has proved similar case, similar paradox so far as the propositional definition of knowledge is concerned. Now, this is what is the paradox, and this is a paradox, a simple contradiction one can say. But since he has dramatize in such a way that the paradox is produced through a kind of imagination and thought experiment and counterexample. Now, coming to the two techniques applied by Gettier to arrive this conclusion, let us discuss something. Two concepts. The first one is called counter example, and another is called thought experiment. Because these two are the philosophical techniques particularly used by analytical philosopher to prove or to clarify philosophical problem, to offer solution to philosophical problem. And as we know, Gettier's article is considered as one of the paradigm case of analytic philosophy, particularly analytic epistemology, during the heyday of analytic philosopher. Now, what is a counterexample? A counterexample is an example that is given to counter a standard example. Now, knowledge is a concept which has been which analytic philosophers have been trying to understand by providing a definition of it, by providing the necessary and sufficient condition of it, and also by providing certain example that fulfill the necessary and sufficient condition of a situation called knowledge. And in this process, they provide the example for that. Now, counter example, and in the process, what happened? In the process of theorization, that is when we theorize on knowledge, the concept of knowledge, we provide a definition of knowledge through sufficient necessary condition. And this particular thing is called theorization of knowledge. Now, when we arrive at a definition through this necessary and sufficient condition or the philosophical theorization, we produce a general principle of that concept. So, in the case of knowledge, we have this general concept that the general principle of knowledge will be something like that. It is not a very, I'm just formulating it on my own. It is not a standard way, but one way it can be put this way, that a proposition will be called as knowledge when it is true, believed, and justified. Or a case will be called as all cases of proposition are knowledge, or will be treated as knowledge if they fulfill these three conditions. This is a general principle of the knowledge on the basis of the philosophical theorization of the definition of knowledge. Now, to strengthen this particular definition and the general principle of knowledge, we need to guard our definition and the principle against a counter example. And the counter example is a process which is produced in the process of thought experiment. And the thought experiment is nothing but a kind of logical experiment, logical manipulation, in which what we do, we take a standard definition of something, in our case it is knowledge, and we translate that principle into a general, universal generalized principle. For example, all FRCs or all SRPs, like that. All cases of S are all cases of P. So all SRP, or it can be translated into a conditional proposition, P implies Q. Or if all cases of knowledge fulfill this condition, then such cases will be called as knowledge. So P implies Q. Now, in this thought process, in the thought experiment, what will happen? If we can produce an example of F which is not a case of S, or S which is not a case of P, or if you can produce an example of P which is not a case of Q, then we have produced a counterexample through thought experiment to challenge the standard definition and the principle of knowledge. And Getier's example, Getier's imaginary example is nothing but the counterexample produced through the thought experiment. And Gettier has used two techniques to produce, to introduce the counterexample. And these two principles can be called as the principle of validity in epistemic logic. That means he has equated the concept of, he has defined epistemic justification in terms of validity of the deductive logic. This is one thing, and another principle is the principle of entailment. So and we have partially explained these two principles while discussing how Gettier has produced a kind of paradox by using this epistemic justification, defined in terms of the validity, deductive validity, and in terms of the entailment. Now, so one can say that Gettier has produced the paradox that challenge the standard definition of knowledge by saying that if you want to define knowledge in terms of these three conditions, it will result in a kind of paradox. And this paradox will definitely paralyze. It will simply collapse our understanding of knowledge, our definition of knowledge, and in the process, the entire edifice of epistemology is likely to collapse. Now, this is what is the Gettier's paradox. Now, what to do with this paradox? The first thing is that people have started, there are several options, but two options is very glaring. Gettier has concluded his paper, small paper, saying that these three conditions of knowledge, though they are necessary, are not sufficient, which is usually believed to be sufficient. And he simply kept quiet. He has not discussed what to be done with that kind of thing. Many people have started picking up from this point, and they have started to answer Gettier by providing a fourth condition, and that by providing that fourth condition, that will answer Gettier's problem. And they have assumed that whatever Gettier is, the problem posed by Gettier is genuine, is a real problem, is a logical challenge, and we need to answer Gettier by providing a fourth condition. And that particular kind of solution is known in the literature of Gettier's problem as the fourth condition. And usually, this fourth condition, the so-called fourth condition, has been, there are several ways, several versions, several people have attempted, and that is too technical to discuss all these things, but I will try to summarize them in 5 main categories. And usually in the literature of the Gettier's problem, these 5 kinds of solution to Gettier's problem is presented as fourth condition as a positive answer, as an answer, is a kind of is a fourth condition, is a positive condition, like belief condition, truth condition, and the justification condition. But here again, I differ with them, with the literature. According to me, all these 5 so-called fourth condition are all negative condition, and they are not actually fourth condition, but rather they are these 3 conditions, the standard condition, the truth, belief, and justification condition are the positive condition for knowledge. But these 3 conditions are, according to me, are the negative condition of these 3 conditions in different sense. And this 5 so-called fourth condition, which I call as the negative condition of these 3 conditions, are as follows. The first one is, here I will not be discussing the name and the books and other things. It is just a plain description. The first condition will be the eliminating fallibility. According to this condition, if we can eliminate the fallibilism, the possibility of fallibility in these three conditions, particularly in the condition of the truth and justification, then probably Getier's problem will not arise. And we know that what is fallibility? That is, fallibility is the opposite of infallibility. Fallibility means, it is fallible. It may go wrong also. And infallibility means the logical possibility of not being fallible, not being, it is error free, like that. The possibility of error is totally eliminated. That situation will be called infallibility. So in this case particularly, if you let us go back to Getier's thought experiment of that job scenario. Now the T condition, that is, whoever will get the job will have 10 rupees, and before that, from where it has been derived, that is P and Q. What is that condition? That Ram will get Ram has 10 rupees in his pocket, and Shyam has not Ram, Hari has 10. That P and Q. So that two conditions, P and Q, P dot Q, this particular proposition is considered to be true by S, that is Shyam, but his acceptance on the basis of the acceptance of certain authority, on the basis of the statement given by the person who is going to give job to that one person. Now, since that, but the possibility of not giving him job or giving to somebody else is quite possible, so that possibility is still there. Therefore, that infallibility condition is, since that particular statement is fallible, and if we can remove the infallibility forever, and since that is not done in the first case, therefore we have this Gettier paradox. Now, first, let us describe all the 5 negative conditions one after another. Then we'll see. Then I will try to see how they are not the separate condition, rather than they are just part of different conditions. Coming to the second that is the second proposal for fourth condition. That is called eliminating logs. We can see that there is a log has played a big role in generating the Gettier paradox. We know that it happened. It has so happened that the other person is getting the job, who is not supposed to get the job, and he has, rather, the person who has got the job has got 10 rupees in his pocket. It is the 10 rupees is not there in the person who has the rupees in his pocket. So log is playing also a greater roles in Gettier's paradox. So coming to the third thing, so if we can eliminate logs, that kind of accidental incident, then probably Gettier paradox will not arise. Now coming to the fourth condition, it will be called as eliminating false evidence. Now, in Gettier cases, in generating the entailment, that is T proposition, he has relied lot on the evidence provided by authority. Somebody has said it, somebody has just promised it, but he has not checked the reliability of the person, the authority. One thing, he has not also checked the past history of the person, his truthworthiness, as well as he has not relied on certain contextual situation. So because he has not paid sufficient attention to the relevant evidence, therefore we have this problem. So if we can eliminate that kind of false evidence, probably we will not have this kind of problem. The fourth condition is called defeasibility, elimination of defeat. And what is a defeat? Defeat is a kind of condition. If we accept a proposition, the truthfulness of a proposition, and we are also aware of under what condition, under what truth possibility, the truthfulness of a particular proposition is likely to be defeated, and if we ignore that likely truthfulness, or that will affect the truthfulness of the truth condition of a particular proposition, then we will have this kind of problem. And in Gettier cases, the defeatability, the possibility, the truth condition of the defeasibility has been ignored. Therefore, we have this situation. And the last one is called reliabilism. We know that when we form beliefs, particularly it is related to the belief condition, we should we should refer to those kind of cognitive processes which is likely to produce more reliable, causally more sound belief system than something which holds reliability and causality is in doubtful. Therefore, the reliability of the perception, belief forming system, cognitive biases, situation, and psychological biases, and that kind of thing has been ignored. Therefore, we have this problem. Therefore, if we can eliminate that thing, we will not have this problem. So, this 5 conditions we are called all negative proposition. And as I said, the first of the infallibility is a negative condition of the justification. Log is a negative condition of both truth condition and the belief condition. Similarly, the false evidence, elimination of false evidence, is a negative part of the justification condition. And the last, the defeatability is a condition, negative part of the truth condition. And similarly, reliability, causality are concerned with the negative aspect of belief and truth condition. So, what is the outcome of how it is related to our problem so far? But by discussing that, by arguing that these 5 so-called 4th condition are nothing but the negative aspect of the 3 original conditions of knowledge, that is belief, truth, and justification condition. I am simply saying that by providing the so-called 4th condition, we are not in a position to answer or give a solution to Gettier's paradox. Rather, what we are saying, that we are simply improving on the, or consolidating on the different condition of knowledge. So again, even if we will improve this 3 condition by supplementing our so-called 4th condition, Gettier's problem may arise. So it will not give a solution. At best, it will simply consolidate our condition. But Gettier paradox may still arise even if our 3 original conditions.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, Chandan, he has joined. Professor Sahu has joined. He will continue, I suppose. Yeah.
Hello, Professor Pandey.
Yeah, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear. Yeah. Very nice discussion is going on. Please continue, Professor Sahu. Please continue.
Please continue, sir.
I'm using my mobile now. Is it okay, sir? I mean,
It is
you can
perfect.
hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
Perfect. Good. Very good.
okay, so, okay, sir. So what I was discussing is that these three conditions are just consolidated, and the Gettier paradox still remain as it is. Now, what to do with this? Now, what I'm saying that this paradox, so-called Gettier paradox, or the paradox of knowledge, is not a genuine problem. And whatever way you are, even if you improve on your three conditions or supplemented them, considered them, it will not go. And this needs to be dissolved rather than solved. And that is why this is the next part of my presentation, how it needs to be dissolved. And we know that in our analytic tradition, there are so many problems, problem of induction and problem of universal, problem of God. They have been dissolved, so they are not very successful. But there are attempts to resolve this problem. Similarly, I will be applying those techniques and tools of the analytic philosopher, some logical tool, to prove that this knowledge paradox raised by Gettier, or the Gettier's paradox, will be dissolved. I will be using not exactly logical argument or tool, but a kind of line of argument. I will be using 4 kinds of argument to prove that Gettier's paradox is dissolved. The first one is that Gettier has used, or rather used, the concept of deductive validity into the epistemic justification, and because of this particular reason, he has landed into this kind of paradoxical situation. Secondly, I will be questioning his concept of logical entailment in generating the knowledge paradox. Thirdly, I will be using the findings of experimental epistemology to show that the paradox, so-called paradox, is not a paradox. And the last will be, I'll say that, last argument will be that Gettier has misused or misinterpreted the traditional definition of knowledge given by Plato. As a result, he has landed into this kind of problem. Now, coming to the first thing. Now, in deductive logic, we know that an argument is valid provided if the premises are true, the conclusion cannot be false. In deductive logic, a situation may arise where all the premises are false and the conclusion is true. Still, the argument will be valid, though that argument will not be sound. This is the elementary things of the concept of validity in the deductive logic. Now, take this concept of the concept of validity in deductive argument and impose into the concept of justification in epistemology. Remember, go back to its original counter example. Now PQR and C, that did the four propositions we have discussed. Now he says that the entail proposition, that is, whoever has got the job will have 10 rupees in his pocket. This particular proposition, this is a conclusion, let's say. It is true, believed and justified. But this is believed and true and justified based on the proposition which is false. That means it is not P and Q has been transferred like anything. Now, this is quite possible in logic. From the false premises, one can derive a true conclusion which will be equally valid. But if it is applied in the context of knowledge, belief, truth, and justification, and particularly epistemic justification, your argument will be logically valid, no doubt. But that argument will be unsound, because you are deriving a conclusion, a particular proposition, that is, whoever will get the job will have 10 rupees in his pocket. It's basically valid but on sound. And in epistemology, this kind of on sound principle is not allowed, because epistemic argument is not just the deductive argument. It is much more than the deductive argument. Therefore, here, because of this kind of misuse, imposing validity of deductive logic into epistemic validity or epistemic justification, this is a misuse of logic. Therefore, he has generated this kind of paradox. Secondly, if you are familiar with the predicate calculus, in predicate calculus, we have four rules, rules of derivation. That is universal generalization, universal instantiation, particular instantiation, particular generation, this kind of thing. And one of them is that from a individual constant, one cannot apply universal generalization. From Fa, A is an individual constant, one cannot apply UG and saying that for all x, Fx. So this is invalid. And this particular fallacy is very much committed by Gettier in deriving whoever has got the job will have 10 rupees in his pocket as an entitlement from the P, Q, and R is nothing but deriving or applying a universal generalization UG principle on a singular proposition, that is on an individual constant. Our thing is that Ram and Shyam, they are individual person. From there, you are combining them together, FA, MA or something like that. On the basis of you are generalizing that whoever will have this, will have this. So you are applying UG principle on the basis of the individual constant, which is not permitted, which is invalid. So therefore, his the paradox he is creating is baseless, is not logical. Thirdly, there is a new branch of epistemology called experimental epistemology, and in that branch, what they do, they take up one epistemic intuition, then they put forth the epistemic intuition among different people from different cultural background, from different historical background, and they ask their opinion. Such an experiment has been done on the Gettier paradox. People from India, so Indian people also, they took part in that. That study was particularly conducted by one philosopher called Weinberg. It is very famous now. So he will be asking people like that. Do you think that Gettier's cases or Gettier paradox is a case of knowledge or not? And the same question will be asked to different people from different context, different culture. So people will have different answer to that particular intuition. Some people will say that according to the new situation, we will say that X knows P. According to some other culture, X, according to them, S does not know the P. So the so-called intuition of knowledge generated through Gettier paradox is not universally accepted by all people. So it is not logical. It is culture specific. Therefore, the paradox is not a logical paradox. It is at best an apparent paradox. And the fourth one is called Gettier has misused or misinterpreted Plato's definition of knowledge. And we know that Plato has first proposed this definition of knowledge in Meno. And Meno is a transitory text, transitory dialogue. It is partly Platonian, partly Socratic. In that particular dialogue, he has proposed knowledge, or particularly defined knowledge, in terms of in joining with something like that. And in the Theaetetus, he has defined justification in terms of account. And in that, in Theaetetus, he has rejected the definition of justification proposed in Meno. And in Theaetetus, he has proposed three definitions, and particularly these three definitions, three conditions he calls account, are called belief, justification, and truth condition. And he said that these three conditions, this is Plato's own view, he said that these three conditions are even not fulfilled. So ultimately, he said that like all his dialogues, the end result of all Platonic dialogues, including Meno and Theaetetus, is aporia. That is puzzlement. He has never accepted anything fixed. It is according to him, it is open-ended. So Plato has not defined knowledge as true, justified belief as a final condition. It is open-ended, and he has never approved it. And according to him, this definition can be challenged. Now, Gautier has said that this is the definition given by Plato, and as if it is a final thing. The the kind of thought experiment Gautier is putting or applying to the concept of knowledge, to the definition of knowledge, is the same kind of approach Plato is also doing. He's not deriving or arriving at the final definition of knowledge, and he's saying that it will lead to aporia or puzzlement. No final definition is given. Now, if you are saying that this is the definition, fixed definition, as Gautier is saying, and he wants to say that this involves a kind of paradox, this is a gross misinterpretation of Platon concept of what is the result out of it? My
Yeah,
conclusion is that
good.
the three conditions are not only necessary but also sufficient condition of knowledge, and we should stick to it. But then what is knowledge? According to me, we should apply the family resemblance tools to the concept of knowledge, and we will say that knowledge is not only truth, believed, and justified, but also all the five so-called fourth condition. And if a particular case of knowledge, a putative case of knowledge, fulfill majority of this condition, this three condition, positive condition, and all the five negative condition, if it fulfills majority of condition, then your putative claim of a proposition as knowledge is much more likely to be accepted as a case of knowledge. But it will not result in a kind of paradox which Gautier seems to be proposing. So with this, I complete my presentation. Let me summarize for 2-3 sentences, then I will conclude. First, I argue that in the theorization of knowledge, when we are trying to define the main concept of epistemology like knowledge and justification, we provide necessary and justification condition, and win the process, and to establish, to consolidate our position, our theorization of knowledge, we provide example and counter example through thought experiment. But in the case of providing a definition of knowledge, Gautier seems to argue that in the theorization of the knowledge, defining the knowledge, it leads to a kind of paradox. Some people they say that it is a genuine problem, so they have started offering certain solution to it. According to me, these solutions are not the solution. It is just a consolidation of the three conditions. And according to me, this is a false paradox, and that need to be eliminated. And I have proposed four arguments. One is the condition of justification, the condition of entailment, the condition of experimental philosophy, as well as the misinterpretation of Plato's theory of concept, to prove that Gautier paradox does not arise. And my final conclusion is that the definition of knowledge as true, justified belief still hold true. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Over to Professor Pandey.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to invite Professor Pandey to begin the Q&A session. Professor Pandey?
Yes. Hello. So it was wonderful to listen Professor Gopal Sahu to deliver on such a complex issue. There are many questions in the chat box. So before that, I would like to congratulate once again to Professor Gopal Sahu for presenting such a wonderful way, such a wonderful way, a very serious problem, and the problem is that whether that problem is genuine or not genuine. So whether you agree with the issues raised by Gettier or you don't agree with the issues raised by Gettier, definitely it is going to be a point of discussion. And whether the problems raised by Gettier are genuine or not, discussions are very hot about that issue. And from that perspective, Professor Gopal Sahu has provided a new perspective that the problem is not genuine, and it has to be looked from a different perspective, from the perspective which has not been shown so far. So from that way, that his suggestions are new also, that he has contributed something to this paradox philosophically. In the history of philosophy, he has contributed something that the problem is such that the genuineness of this problem could be questioned from a logical point of view. Well, this has a great history, the Gettier problem, and still PhDs are being written. So it was really very interesting and insightful to listen Professor Gopal Sahu. And from here on, there are three questions which I think Professor Gopal Sahu would like to take on, because these questions are also very serious questions. And the first question is raised by Dr. Prashant Shukla. So, Dr. Shukla, are you available here to ask your question?
Yes, sir.
Also, please ask your question.
First of all, allow me to thank Professor Sahu for such a thought-provoking presentation. Sir, we are really honored to have you here in our weekend seminar. Sir, I have faced this question time and again whenever the Gettier's paradox come back to us. And since you are one of the rarest experts we have right now in India, so I would like to pose this question to you. Sir, do you see Gettier's paradox as a problem of knowledge actually, or it is simply a problem of claims of knowledge? Now, I'm asking this simple question simply because of the reason that the classical example of the Smith and Jones having 10 coins in their respective pockets is a classic example of how can I claim my knowledge to be true and not that of what is knowledge, what is the nature of knowledge, and what is the scope of knowledge. So, would you like to differentiate between the two, or would you take them as the substitute questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Prashant. Uh, what I will say that Gettier paradox is a paradox. Is a paradox according to me is not concerning knowledge or the claim of knowledge per se. Rather, it is a problem concerning the concept of justification. And I am saying this like is that he is questioning the because he is questioning the deficiency of a knowledge claim or a putative case of knowledge, deficiency of the justification condition. So rather, it is a case of his questioning the condition of justification. It is a problem of justification. Therefore, since it is a condition, it is a problem of justification, he has superimposed certain logical concept like entailment, validity into justification, and through justification to the epistemology, and is creating certain artificial problem in epistemology. And we know that epistemology is not a problem of they use inductive logic, not the deductive logic. So this is one thing. Another thing I would like to say is that yes, if somebody, I would rather differentiate the knowledge and the knowledge claim. A claim is always a claim, and unless it is proved, then it will not become a knowledge. So knowledge claim is just the precedent of the knowledge. So it is logically first knowledge claims come, then the knowledge. Now, if you are aware of the literature of Gettier, you will say that Gettier problem, when a particular knowledge faces Gettier problem, it is called Gettierite. Gettiered, Gettierite. Now, most of the people say that all the cases of knowledge, all the putative cases of knowledge will not be Gettierified. Only a few cases will face this problem. Now, if that is the case, then one can say that Gettier problem is even very, very rare. It is very rarely encountered in our day-to-day life, and it is even very rarely encountered in the standard epistemology, and it is very, very, very rarely encountered in science, where people are also talking about knowledge, acquisition of knowledge, justification of knowledge, application of knowledge. Yes, sir. Next question, please.
So next question is by. I suppose that I should ask this simple question is asked by Diksha Shukla. So Diksha Shukla, are you available to ask question?
Yes, sir.
So you can ask your question.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a very happy Teachers' Day to all. Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Sir,
I can.
Sir, my first question is that, sir, I just want a simple illustration of law of entailment. And second is that, what is the difference between...
Just repeat your first question.
Sir, my first question is, I just want a simple illustration of law of entailment.
Law of entailment, yes.
And
okay.
Second is, sir, what is the difference between Plato's condition of knowledge, that is his justified truth and belief, and Gettier's?
All right, Diksha. Now you have.
What is the difference? What is the difference between Plato's and Gettier's?
Yes, sir. His conditions of knowledge, both the conditions of both of them of conditions of knowledge.
Okay. Now coming to your first question, you want an illustration, an example of entailment. Now, I'm giving the same example that I discussed in my presentation. Now, suppose that there is a person S who knows a proposition P. S knows P. Got it? That means P stands for I have 10 rupees in my pocket, and Q stands for I am sitting in front of the table. P and Q both are true. Let's say they are justified and they are standard proposition. Now combine them together, P and Q. Now, if you combine them together, then it will also be true according to logic. Are you following me?
Yes, fine.
Hello?
Yes, it's fine. Perfect.
Now, on the basis of this combined proposition, one can logically derive a proposition saying that if I am sitting on the table, then if I will get the job, then I will have 10 rupees in my pocket. So this particular proposition is a case of entailment from this proposition P and Q. So this is what is an example of logical entailment. But I am giving another example. Let's say if I say that I am here, from this particular proposition, I can entail that presently I am not at my home. So this particular proposition that I am not at my home is a logical entailment from the preposition that I am in my office. So this is an example of entailment in the simple way. Coming to the second question. Now Plato has rather proposed three conditions for a proposition to be called as logic. And this is true, belief, and justification condition. And it is not final, as I said. Now, according to Gettier, these three conditions are simply necessary conditions. Both for Plato and Gettier, they will consider that these three conditions are the condition. But to Plato, they are both the necessary and the sufficient condition to some extent. though it is not final. But according to Gettier, these three conditions are necessary taken separately, but they are never sufficient jointly. This is the difference between Gettier and Plato so far as the condition of knowledge is concerned.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
So the next question is by Dr. Inakshi Ray Mitra, Delhi University. Dr. Mitra, please ask your question. Inakshi Di, are you available? I think she's not here, no?
Yeah,
She's not here. I can ask her question. So she has raised one question. She has appreciated your interpretation of uh, uh, restrictions on application of UG. She has appreciated your this thing, and she has very much appreciated. Now she has raised one question also. She has just joined. So should we give mic to her? So Dr. Inakshi
Hello?
Mitra,
Hello?
please ask your
Hello?
question. Yeah.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, am I audible?
Very much, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Sorry,
I can hear you.
Professor Sahu. I would just, a very nice presentation, very analytic and rigorously framed presentation. Thanks for that. I will just confine myself to some confusions about logic. The same thing about entailment. P dot Q. From that, Gettier is going to say that P dot Q entails if P then Q. But P dot Q will entail not if P then Q in the sense, which sense? If P in the sense of, if then in the sense of material implication, or if then in the sense of ordinary if then, natural language if then, or if then in the sense of entailment itself. We all know about logic is P dot Q entails P horseshoe Q. That is the material implication. But P dot Q will not entail if P then Q in the sense of necessary implication or even in the sense of natural language sense of if then. So that is my first question. And secondly, also it relates to this one, that how is it that Gettier was not aware of this elementary rule of deductive logic that one cannot perform UG on individual constants? Because Hopi says, as we all know, that you can perform UG on arbitrarily selected individuals. If A and B are arbitrarily selected individuals, like if we interpret Gettier as Ram and Sham as arbitrarily selected individuals, and perhaps we can perform UG on that. So that was my second question. But my initial concern is the first one, that P dot Q will entail not if P then Q in the sense of natural language if then, or in the sense of entailment itself, but only in the sense of material implication. So what is your response on that?
Okay, ma'am. Now coming to your second question, whether Gettier was aware of the predicate calculus or not, I'm not very sure. But he is an expert in modal logic, so definitely he will not. He's not very casual, and but another thing that he is, so far as his logic is okay. So from and as you said, the Ram Shyam are not arbitrarily selected people; they are concrete people. So they are individual constant A, like that. From FA one cannot apply UG. So this kind of logic, I mean, how he's committed this mistake, I don't know. But that is another part. Now coming to your first question, neither Gettier nor me is claiming or saying that P implies Q either in the natural sense or the material implication sense is entailed from P dot Q. This is not my claim, and neither Gettier is also claiming the same. What I'm saying, and Gettier is also saying, is that from P dot Q, one can entail whoever has this, that person will have that. That whoever will get the job will have 10 rupees is not a material implication. It is not P implies Q. What it is, Gettier has not clarified. but I think it is simply a statement which is not necessarily can be translated or can be put in the form of P implies Q, either in the natural sense or even in the material implication sense. But it is a, I don't know whether it is a material implication or not, but it is definitely not a P implies Q wala things. So therefore, what I am saying that even if it is material implication or not, that is beside the point. Our purpose is that that particular statement cannot be materially implied from P and Q and P dot Q. This is what is the line of argument I have interpreted get your problem. Is
Okay. Thank you.
is that okay, ma'am? Okay, ma'am. Okay, sir, please.
So, can I take the next two questions? There are two more questions. Huh? One by K. Om Narayan Rao.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
K. Om Narayan Rao, you are now free to ask your question. Yes.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Namaskar, Professor Sahu and Professor Pandey and other professors in the meeting. Actually, I'm new to get here, but from what I got from the lecture, I'm asking here. Actually, from on the fulfillment of the three knowledge conditions, if you are arriving at a generalization, a sort of general proposition, say all SSP, there the problem lies. What I see in the entire paradoxical situation. What is that? Since we arrive at a generalization from on the fulfillment of the three knowledge conditions, whenever we counter with a contrary instance, say we have reached SSP and in a general form, and when we have come across a contrary instance of the sort SC is not P, and when we combine both, we are in a contradictory situation or in a paradoxical situation. So that's the problem where I see. So instead of arriving at a general proposition, say all SSP, so it is always better, as I feel, that whenever there is a fulfillment of the three knowledge conditions, we can arrive at a proposition of a general sort, but not exactly a general proposition, wherein there would be a scope for incorporating any contrary instance that comes against it. Suppose we arrive at a general proposition, say all crows are black, there is always a chance of a white cloak being there. So my supposition is we shouldn't arrive at a general proposition of the form all SSP or all crows are black in order to keep it open for any contrary instance in the future. Say we come across a white crow, that has to be incorporated. So instead of arriving at a general proposition, so we should arrive at such a proposition where there would be a scope for incorporating a contrary instance. So if that is done, then hopefully the paradoxical situation that we see in Gettier may hopefully be resolved. So instead of my final submission is, instead of reaching at a generalization in the true sort, we should keep the generalization open for any contrary instance and accordingly modify the generalization basing on the knowledge conditions. So that would help us in resolving the paradox and getting away from the paradox. This is my submission. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, good. Professor Sahu, would you like to
Yeah,
say something about
I didn't see any problem, but one problem I see in his suggestion. Whenever you are offering a definition through necessary and sufficient condition of anything, and in our case, knowledge, then that kind of definition will result in a kind of generalization. And if it is not put in the general form, whether all SS are PS, or even P, all cases of P are all cases of Q, then probably you are not providing a definition of something in terms of necessary and sufficient condition. What I am saying is that in theorization of knowledge, particularly in providing necessary condition and sufficient condition of knowledge and the definition of knowledge, one has to provide a general principle of knowledge. Now, suppose that you are not providing general provision, as Narayan Rao is also telling, then you are admitting that your definition is liable to be changed. It will be contextual, it will be liable for fallibilism. It may be accepted by some, it may not be accepted by some. So from the beginning, if you admit that it is not a general statement, then you are admitting the possibility of error and skepticism from at the beginning of your inquiry. So I think what you will end up at the end of the discussion of the theoretical discussion, you are beginning with that discussion. So the problem will remain the same.
Arunima, next is last question, Arunima.
Hello, it's so nice being a part of the Saturday seminar here. So, wonderful deliberation, Professor Sahu. It was fantastic. So, I will just connect, to the last session first, because I had a separate question, but regarding the discussion you just had with Professor Rao, isn't it not the fact that when we are searching for a definition of knowledge, so when we are expecting a definition, definitely we want a generalization. But we want a definition of knowledge, and we have to understand the knowledge situation. The knowledge situation is basically an experiential situation, something we relate to our experience. Okay, so, and we are trying to do a deduction there. Okay, so whatever is related to our experience or experiential situations, can at all deductions be done there? This is my first question, because deductions are supposed to be formal in nature. Okay, so whenever the material part comes, or I mean the experiential matters comes, can deduction be sufficient to at all search for a definition of knowledge in that way? Is knowledge situation a proper situation where we expect to have definitions through generalizations by process of deduction? This is my first question. Okay, this connects to the last question. Second is, when you were suggesting some options, I mean, when you were suggesting some complements or complementing the justification condition by your fallibility condition and luck, false evidence, defeat, or weak causality, can it happen that instead of calling these conditions negative conditions, we say that these are relative conditions to the justification condition, relative in the sense that we are considering the justification condition provided this is satisfied, the 5 conditions are satisfied. If we just give a, if we just state that these are the conditions, if these conditions are satisfied, then only the justification condition is justified. If we make a justification condition related to all these 5 conditions, instead of making these conditions negatively complementing the justification condition, is that possible? This is my second suggestion. And I don't know whether I have failed to hear you, but when you were answering one query just 2 or 3 minutes back, is it that you're trying to say that if S knows P and S knows Q, then it follows that S knows P and Q? If this is the case, then I will try to understand that this possibly may not be the case, because if S knows P and S knows Q, logic doesn't say that from this S knows P and Q. From P and Q, we do not get P and Q. But from P and Q, we definitely get P or we get Q. But from P separately and from Q separately, we do not get P and Q. So please, these are the 3 questions I have. Thank you.
Okay. Now coming to the first question, as you said, now deduction is not induction. So don't expect the characteristic of deductive certainty and validity and all these things in the inductive logic. And as we know, epistemology mostly use inductive logic. So don't expect that kind of logical certainty, logical validity in epistemic logic. So this question is resolved now. Coming to your second question. Just remind me, then I'll just pick up. What is the second question?
I tried to suggest that.
Right. Got it. Why I'm calling these 3 conditions, these 5 so-called conditions, so-called proposed 4th condition as negative, is that all these conditions begins with elimination, eliminating fallibility, eliminating logs, eliminating false belief, false evidence, eliminating defeasibility, eliminating weak evidence, that kind of thing. So elimination is connotes a kind of negativity. Though, as you say, a negative can be also called relative to, let's say, it supplement justification. So it is a relative to justification condition. So if you use relative, then it will the negativity will be removed. But ultimately, they are basically eliminating condition, eliminating certain errors situation. So that is why I have used them as a negative condition. But negativity always supplement the positivity. Negativity is complementary to your positivity. So that way, whether it is negativity or relativity or whatever by name you will call, they will work the same thing. Now coming to the third question. Now there is a principle called KK thesis. KK thesis. If you know, there's a KK thesis. If you know a proposition, and if you know that that proposition implies a different proposition, and if you know that that proposition, that the first proposition is true, then by KK principle, you also know that its implication is also equally true, and you know that. This is what is called the KK thesis. Now, P dot Q. P is a proposition, Q is a different proposition. Both can be combined to make a compound proposition, that is P dot Q. But from P, one cannot derive P dot Q. That is not in the 19 rules that will forbid you to derive P dot Q from P. So that is what is not the case. What I am saying that from P dot Q, if you have P, if you have Q, both can be combined. From P dot Q, one can derive certain other proposition through the principle of entailment. And in that case, this particular entail proposition is one way or other way is derived from P or Q or both. So that way, that is the lacuna, that is the limitation of logic which Gettier has manipulated to produce this kind of contradictory and paradoxical situation.
So now we have come to the conclusion of today's Saturday seminar, and before concluding, I would like to say a few words about the deliberations. That it was uh, wonderful presentation. New insights we have received, and many questions were asked, and I'm thankful to those who have asked questions as well. That is Dr. Prashant Shukla, and then Deeksha Shukla, then Anurima Bhattacharya, Meenakshi Mitra, and Dr. Rao, and some other person also asked question. Then one question was asked.
Meenakshi Mitra.
Meenakshi Mitra asked one question, wonderful question. So these are the questions that clear the concept in a better manner. So in brief, I would like to say that even if Gettier problem is not a genuine problem, but still it has raised so many issues for us to discuss and show as to how it is not a genuine problem and how it has to be seen in new context from the perspectives of Professor Gopal Sahu. So I suppose that this has been the achievement of today, and in the end I would like to invite Dr. Prashant Shukla for delivering formal note of thanks. Dr. Prashant Shukla.
Honorable professors and all my dear friends, it seems to be a great honor to all who have helped in making this weekend seminar series a very resounding effort. First of all, I would like to give my hearty vote of thanks to our chief guest and speaker, Professor Gopal Sahu, head of my alma mater, Department of Philosophy, Prayagraj. Thank you, sir, for your very thought-provoking and interesting addressal of Gettier's paradox. It was an excellent presentation that made today quite memorable for all us students of philosophy. I would like to give my vote of thanking the coordinating team of all our students, research scholars under the very competent guidance of Professor K.C. Pandey Head of Department, Lucknow University, Department of Philosophy. Finally, I thank all the wonderful participants who have turned up in such great number, not only from our department and institution, rather from other institutions, especially Hemlata ma'am, Arunima ji, Inakshi ji, Rao sir, and all other whose names are not taken here, but we are really, really thankful to all and keep participating in our humble efforts towards academia and towards philosophy. So thank you so much again to all the participants, all the people, especially chief guest today. And I would like to end my vote of thanks with a very happy Teachers' Day. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It was
Thank-
very pleasant today. Thanks on my behalf. Thank you all. And with this note,
Thank
we
you,
are
sir.
ending today with this information that next Saturday we are going to have Professor D.N. Tiwari's lecture on this platform. So all are invited that day, that is Saturday, next Saturday as well. Thank you, everybody, again. Bye bye.
Thank you.